Good evening and welcome to the December 2025 Ignite CDA board meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We have a quorum, and if you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is public comment. I do not see any public comment, so we'll move next to the consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar, including the items as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Executive Director's Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First item under the report is just to kind of touch base on the Phase 3 Ad Hoc Committee recommendation regarding attainable housing development strategy for the Phase 3 site. Just kind of share background with everybody and bring the viewing audience up to speed. So the Ad Hoc Committee is comprised of the following membership. And for Ignite CDA, we have Commissioners Miller, Jester, and Meyer. Burns as Executive Director and Quaid as Legal Counsel. Comer has Phil Boyd. City of Coeur as Hillary Patterson, and Heartland Real Estate Consultants as Ben Wharton. So that's the team that brings forward the recommendation. So just to refresh everybody's memory, the committee recommends to the board the following development concept for the Phase 3 site, which includes 100% attainable deed-restricted home ownership product. This is captured in Figure 1 up here. So just to kind of refresh everybody's memory, we have single-family homes down here along Lumber Lane. These are townhomes. These represent cottages, townhomes, twin homes on the east side, and townhomes around the village green. The concept, which includes a courtyard-style open space area and public parking areas, depicts the type of residential building product that we're looking for. The concept optimizes the use of the Phase 3 site by constructing 104 residential units and provides a varied mix of products that touch various affordability levels of the community. The committee reviewed and discussed master plan generated information in the process of forming a recommendation. The primary topic of discussion involved the strategy of working with the private sector on developing the site and Ignite CDA or the developer engaging a third-party entity to manage the long-term nature of the deed restrictions, or work with a nonprofit organization who would develop the site and manage the long-term nature of the deed restrictions. The pros and cons of working with these two sectors were discussed by the committee. During the conversation regarding working with either the nonprofit builders or the private sector builders, the committee leaned towards working with the nonprofit building sector, which would likely result in further lowering housing development costs and placing taxpayer dollars into a nonprofit's hands that could be further leveraged in the Coeur d'Alene community for additional attainable housing opportunities. So at that time, a motion was made by Committee Member Meyer, which was seconded by Committee Member Jester, to share the following recommendation with the Ignite CDA Board regarding the Atlas Phase 3 Attainable Housing Development Strategy. Utilize the concept as depicted for 100% attainable housing on the Phase 3 site. Partner with a nonprofit entity to develop the Phase 3 site and to manage the long-term deed restrictions associated with the development. Direct the committee to continue its work on refining the proposed partnership model with a nonprofit entity and bring a more refined partnership model back to the board for further discussion. And finally, directing the committee to pursue engagement of a professional communication expert to develop a communication outreach package for the Phase 3 Attainable Housing Initiative. That recommendation was shared with the board at the November 20th special call board meeting. At the board meeting, the board agreed with the concept of 100% attainable deed-restricted home ownership on the Phase 3 site as depicted, and provided direction to the ad hoc committee to develop a request for proposals for the Phase 3 offering and look to engage a communication firm to assist with messaging. Elements of a Phase 3 attainable housing RFP would most likely include the following. The RFP would be open to both nonprofit and for-profit developers. The RFP objective for awarding the Phase 3 site to a developer that would deliver the desired home ownership, deed-restricted residential product mix as depicted in the figure you see on the screen. Some of the key considerations points in the RFP would include Purchase price for the Phase 3 site, we will leave that door open in case any development team wanted to give us any money for the Phase 3 site, which we would gladly accept. Developer experience with attainable housing initiatives. Submitted proposals, consistency with attainable housing development standards and architectural design guidelines. For sale product pricing at targeted area median income, AMI levels, possibly including developer fees and subcontractor markup fees. Long-term deed restriction management strategy. Community benefit associated with longer-term home sale proceeds. Construction phasing plan and anticipated market absorption. Long-term maintenance strategy for home exterior and landscaping. Sub-HOA enforcement strategy, transaction cost mitigation strategies, and special home buyer programs. So what we envision here, with all those key elements, that we'd have a scoring matrix, that we would have points associated with each of those metrics. And so when the proposal comes in, we'd be able to rank how they would apply to all those key components of the RFP. And so there's a lot of them. In the past, we didn't have near that many kind of scoring elements, but this is a very unique opportunity for a very unique project. And we want to be comprehensive in our approach to evaluate proposals as they come in. We can add to those, we can subtract from those. We'll kind of see how the RFP comes together for the ad hoc committee, but that's kind of where we stand right now. I would like to invite any of the committee ad hoc committee members to add anything to what I've said, but we're looking for a motion for the board to officially approve this in a normal board meeting.
Any comments from anyone on the committee?
I was just going to comment in case maybe I didn't hear it clearly, to share with the board that part of this motion includes hiring of the strategic planning company to do the outreach campaign simultaneous to developing the RFP, correct?
This motion would just be for the recommendation, and as you'll see in the next agenda item, that will be incorporated into the contract amendment for Welch Comer.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next up is the Atlas Project Welch Comer Contract Amendment number 32. I'd like to invite Phil Boyd with Welch Comer Engineers to come up and share with the board a discussion not only of the Amendment 32, but kind of overall touch base about where we've been and kind of where we're heading with the project to kind of refresh everybody's memory.
Thank you, Tony. Chairperson Garcia, thank you, and commissioners. As Tony said, we'll just do a quick walkthrough. We'll talk about a refresher of the Phase 3 attainable housing, then we'll get into the details of the Welch Comer proposed contract amendment, which includes the communications planning. So you all are familiar with the Phase 3 area, which is shown here. It's currently in need of some earthwork that were structural soils that we're still waiting on from one of the I-90 or both of the I-90 projects. The other refresher I wanted to provide is that we started in about August. We actually started a little earlier back in February. Then there was kind of a pause as the board was thinking exactly what to do. And then we started in earnest in August with the ad hoc committee. We had planned on doing 2 ad hoc committee meetings here and here. We ended up adding a third one because there was another little further refinement the committee was looking forward to. Then we had the board meeting, which all of you were there, and now we have the final plan that Tony just presented, which you saw here. So this is the final concept. The product types that we see in here, we provided imagery in the workshop meeting to depict the potential of the architecture. And this was an important component for the ad hoc committee, is they wanted to make sure the architecture was consistent with the neighborhood and was enforceable. So one of the things you'll see later in the scopes of services is supplemental design standards or architectural standards to address Phase 3. Because this is the potential quality. These are actually examples of what GGLO, some of them are examples of GGLO's work on the west side. Some of them are actually examples here on our side, which this is an Active West product that has been photographed a number of times. We showed it several times as what a good example looks like for those types of twin homes. And then this is a concept we provided for what the park might look like, or as I think Tony called it, the cottage green, which I like that. We might have to use that. And so, again, you'll see later on in the presentation, we've plugged a number for improvements, for construction improvements for the park, but that'll be one of the things that the board will ultimately have to wrestle with as we work through the final construction budget, because all of us have been through this enough. We're like, yeah, let's build it like this, and then we start looking at the numbers and gosh, oil went crazy, so PVC pipe is expensive, and now we might have to economize in some parts of the project. But this is the vision of an example of what it could look like. So a couple of key features of the takeaway that we're holding on to and moving forward is this range of AMIs that we plan to be targeting, the board plans to be targeting, and that's in the analytical work that we showed you previously during the workshop. It's 80 to 130% of area median income that does get adjusted for home size, because the AMI is different for a 4-person home versus a 1-person home. Another key thing is, as I talked about, that the ad hoc committee was emphatic about and the board agreed with, is the supplemental architectural standards to maintain quality, because we want to do no harm in the Atlas waterfront neighborhood. The third one was supplemental HOA standards to address what I'm calling density challenges, because as you can imagine, you get more density. There's 104 dwelling units in there, garbage cans, parking, maintenance of the outside. Those are all things that we want to super cognizant of and develop standards for that sub HOA to make sure it is consistent with the quality of the master HOA. So that was another important thing. And then the land development and disposition process, which Tony just walked through all the particular details. So those were the 4 big takeaways that we understand moving forward in the project, which those guide a bunch of the scope of services that we're going to be providing. So before I move on, are there any questions or comments about that? Okay. I'll move on to our contract amendment. You guys had a copy of that in your packet. And the way to think about that, because I know there's lots of words in there, but at the end of the day, one of the products that comes out of that is a set of permit documents or construction documents that we can turn into the city of Coeur d'Alene and get a permit for it, or put out to bid and solicit bidding if that's the direction the board chooses to go through. So I'm not supposed to use the word cradle to grave, but it's the services that are starting from the project all the way to where we get to a set of permit set of drawings. So the site work, infrastructure, all the different elements that go into producing a set of construction documents. In addition to that, and I'm using the schedule to kind of show you these things, there's the RFP phase, the public communications, the standards and rendering that are also in there, because that was a component that, as the ad hoc committee worked through it, one of the things that became apparent was, gosh, this is a unique project. We want to make sure it's communicated well. We think we need a communication strategy. We also need visuals that can communicate the intent, because there's some, I think, bias that happens with folks when you hear attainable housing. They generate this bias, which was unwarranted in many cases, and particularly this case. And so the idea of using visuals prepared by GGLO, site renderings where you can see it in 3D, and then also the strategy developed by a communication expert. Those are all built into this schedule here. And you're not expected to read this little detail here. It was in your packet. But the reason that I wanted to show this is right out of the chute, one of the first things we need to do is get the RFP underway, because we need to know who the building partner might be, because there's 2 entitlement paths. One is to condo plat the site, and the other one is to conventionally plat the site. And that impacts the infrastructure design. So we can't actually start on the water and sewer parts of it, the detailed parts of it, until we get this partner selected, which is why you see the schedule kind of runs out. As we work through the schedule with Tony, one of the things we were a little bit worried about is, well, is the thing on our sides, the design, the RFP, the standards and renderings, the communication strategy, is that unnecessarily holding up how fast we can deliver, or the builder can deliver product to the community? Because we don't want to delay that happening, right? We want to get attainable housing on the street as soon as we possibly can. We gamed out a couple of scenarios, and we don't think that it does. We still think that this schedule will allow a builder to get in and design, because you can see down here on the bottom, they can get into design, permit, and start building, and then deliver product to the market, whether we worked faster at this schedule. But the important point here is getting the builder partner done at the first quarter of the year. This schedule section I put up just to show the amount of communication, and the ad hoc committee, sorry if you don't want to continue on, but Tony and I thought, and I think the board agrees, continuing on with the ad hoc committee is important. And so we have a meeting scheduled in here where we'll be able to develop things, show them to the ad hoc committee, because that guidance, just from the experience you guys went through initially in the master planning phase, how much it helped shape the design with your guys' input. And we think that'll be valuable all the way through the process, especially as we're developing architectural standards and HOA standards that you all will have the opportunity to read and comment on and say, no, let's tweak this. Did you think about that? So you will continue on. We'll also continue on with coming to the board meetings and updating the board on a regular basis, particularly with the economics as we continue to refine the design. So the numbers, this is a breakdown that we just wanted to show kind of the big parts of it. Behind this, and some of the board members have seen them, we have these very detailed estimates that would fill 2 or 3 pages where we go in and we do preliminary quantity takeoffs of all the infrastructure that you see in here, base rock, paving, sidewalks, earthwork, and we develop an initial project cost estimate. But these are kind of the big categories that you can see broken down. You see we have a very large contingency number in here, which we've done that in the past, and there's 2 ways to think about contingency. There's design contingency, where sometimes the client will say, well, gosh, you got that contingency, can we add some gingerbread, some special things? And well, as soon as you do that, it's not available for construction, because you sometimes need that contingency in construction as well. As this project moves forward, one of the things that we'll bring to the board is, okay, we need to nail the budget down. Right about 60% design, we'll be looking to you to say, this is the budget on it to move forward. You can see the original design phase services estimate we had in there, which was just a percentage of the construction cost, which is an approximate way to do it. We actually do everything based on level of effort. We figure out how much time it's going to take to do the work. Bidding and construction phase, if we bid the project and it goes to construction, again, this is a percentage at this point, because we're not certain if this is going to be exactly how long the construction period is going to be. It's better to estimate those things once we've got a set of construction documents together, because we can more accurately estimate it. So the total project cost is about $6.5 million. Tony and I were talking earlier about, where are we at compared to what the board has seen in the past. This is 104 dwelling units, so it's right about $62,500 per dwelling unit. The last time you guys saw this, when we estimated it at about $4.2 million, and that was early in 25, and there were 77 dwelling units. But you can see the cost per dwelling unit has gone up from 54 to 62. Some of that is because we started on that master planning process and we did a much more detailed cost estimate. Some of it is because we've been adding things like a more enhanced park. Originally, us engineers just had a flat green space, GGLO gets involved, starts talking to the ad hoc committee. Now we put playgrounds and picnic shelters in there. But those are the things that we'll be talking about as we move through the design process in order to potentially moderate that cost per dwelling unit. And then the last thing is the breakdown of the fees. There was a good question that Tony forwarded, what are the estimated platting and entitlement costs? We actually had this in the presentation before the question was answered. We don't know the answer to the question because if it's a condo plat, that's one fee. It's a conventional plat, that's another fee. If you just think about the number of property pins that you have to set in a conventional plat, there's hundreds and hundreds. With a condo plat, there's much fewer of them. So once we know that, we'll come back to the board with a proposed supplement for that. You can see the design fees, again, as I mentioned earlier. We had a percentage estimate. This is actually based on the level of effort, landscape architecture, design guidelines, which came out of the ad hoc committee, master planning refinement and renderings, and then the public outreach component. And then these are estimates for the bid phase and the construction phase services as well. So with that, I have thrown a ton of information at you, but glad to answer any questions and get into the weeds to the extent you want to. Oh, sorry, I did have one more slide. I did want to articulate a little bit of a breakdown of who's doing what. Welch Comer obviously does all the project management, site design, infrastructure. We work on the HOA standards. A lot of it will be with Danielle. We also work on RFP development and to the extent anything else that's necessary to get to a set of permit drawings. Coordinating with the utilities, which has become a big endeavor because Avista no longer coordinates with all your utilities, so now we have to coordinate with all the utilities. GGLO is going to do that master plan refinement, architectural standards, renderings, and then the landscape architecture. And then Agnew Beck, which Tony mentioned earlier, we went out and reached out to 3 different communication firms. We got 2 proposals back. Tony, Commissioner Jester, and myself looked at them, reviewed them, interviewed the people, ranked Agnew Beck as the highest, and then sent that both those proposals to the ad hoc committee for their ratification, I guess I'll say. And ultimately, that's who's part of the team, and their scope of work is within our scope of work. We are actually on and I've mentioned this to the ad hoc committee, we're working with GGLO and Agnew Beck on a project, an attainable housing project in Missoula. And as you guys know, if you've worked on teams before, that creates a certain amount of efficiency because you know what they're capable of, if you're going to have to babysit them or you're not going to have to babysit them, which fortunately both these teammates we won't have to babysit because they're great to work with. So that is my last slide. Glad to answer any questions.
Questions? Phil, I don't have the amendment in front of me. What's the total value of the amendment?
Right there, $644,400. Yep.
Okay.
And this is the breakdown of it here. And again, that's what we originally estimated. Don't get too hung up on this number here and why is there such a big difference, because the way, kind of an easy way to think about it is you use a percentage of the construction cost early on. If you have $5 million worth of earthwork, but you're designing to this surface, it just takes $5 million of dirt to get to there. Or if you have $1 million of dirt, you're still getting to a single surface. The level of effort sometimes doesn't match the construction cost. It can be overestimated. And so the second one is actually based on a level of effort estimate where we sit down and go through each task and put an estimated number of hours to it.
Any other questions? Mr.
Comment. First of all, good presentation, Phil, and the breakdown that you gave of the scope of work. Very good, very detailed, appreciate that. There was one thing, it's my understanding, is that we're making an assumption that all of the soil that we had hoped to have to create this site would be available And it's my understanding that might be a little bit of a variable now, and maybe you could just bring everybody up to date on that.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Thank you for the question, and Commissioner Jester is talking about this. NAD, the contractor that's doing I-90 East, was reported, and in the bid documents that ITD put out, that there was a couple 100,000 yards of structural soils from their project. And so you guys remember we went out and chased that. And now it's materializing that there might have been some sort of, I don't know how to characterize it. They don't have 200,000 yards of structural soil. They have something less than that. We have been designing to importing about 45,000 yards of that soil, so that may not materialize. There's a potential that Scarcella, that's doing I-90 West, they may have structural soil, so we're now chasing Scarcella. Maybe 2 iterations ago of the site design, we had done about a 10,000 yard import, of which we've got about 6,000 yards off of the hotel project. So maybe we're short 4,000 or 5,000 or 6,000 yards. If the material doesn't materialize in a time frame, the board will be faced with the decision to say, well, we can go with the 10,000 yard option, which is not as good of a site design. There's compromises in it that I think when probably Commissioner Meyer, Commissioner Jester dig into it, because you guys, not that the other commissioners don't have an eye for it, but you guys have an eye. You've expressed a particular eye for detail when I communicate with you guys about these things. You would look at it and say, I'm not sure that the 10,000 yard option is great. Is there a way to wait for the 40,000 yard option? And we might come to that crossroads in January and February, and the board may have to make a tough call and say, well, we hate to pause for a year, but if it's ultimately better for the project, we may have to do that. But that's a long-winded answer to say we already have a 10,000 yard option we did in 2024. If the board said we want to go with that option, we would start with that base and move forward from here.
And I might add, if I can, the implication of this is there is a cost implication, because this is not a flat site, it is a sloping site. X amount of soil yields one solution, Y amount of soil yields a different solution, and those have cost implications. So that's part of how we would make the decision, is which one is the most efficient in terms of the long, the long view of how we develop the site.
Yep,
So,
that's
thank you, Phil.
excellent, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. See, it feels like I always have a question, but it's housing, so. Can you clarify, please, because this came up as a board question, I think, at one time, that the Ignite board is not going to be involved in the management of this HOA or the deed restrictions or any of that. And so the development of the HOA standards that is done by Welch Comer, are you going to manage that deed restriction and AMI qualification, and/or is it part of the RFP, and/or are you going to a third party?
Another good question. The intent of the HOA standard development is to develop minimum standards that the ad hoc committee believe are important, must be implemented by the builder or the whoever is the ultimate RFP recipient of the project. But if we leave it up to the successful RFP person, they may not put in components in the HOA standard that are important to you all in order to maintain the quality and consistency you expect with the physical environment. In addition to that, there's going to be a bunch of other things that they may choose to do based on their unique approach to HOA standards. But there's some minimum I think you all want to put in there. So that's the extent of the HOA standards. The deed restriction management is down on this fourth bullet here, and that's one of the criteria that you'll be faced with when you get ready to select the builder, because builder A might do a great job. Have you ever done long-term deed restriction management? No, we're going to go get Joe's deed restriction management company. And you guys might look at it and say, gosh, Joe's never done this either. Versus a builder comes in and says, I haven't done it, but I'm going to team up with PAHA or Idaho Housing. And so that's the intent of that bullet 4. But so the answer is correct. Ignite won't be doing any of that. You're just addressing a couple of the key things that the ad hoc committee has thought about as far as maintaining the quality of that neighborhood and going forward in perpetuity.
Thank you.
Long-winded answer, I apologize, but there's a ton of detail there.
Long
and
question.
Yeah, and it's just important that we, they're important details.
Good conversation, good questions. Yes, Chairman.
One quick follow-up question, Phil. Thank you very much for the proposal. It's good to get us to the next stage, as we said, and then thank you for the pricing comparison from the first cut to where we are now. It looks like in the proposal, there's a couple of next steps after this that would get us to the finish line. Because for us as an organization, I think the finish line is the transaction with a development partner who will then take this project and run with it. But as we're balancing the value of the dirt versus the cost it takes to get to the finished lots and provide the housing product that we think is important in the community, a couple of things we're still missing with entitlements and condo plats. Of course, that'll vary a little
Yep.
bit, but also any other services that go with that. I guess what I'm looking for is maybe a ballpark range, variables acknowledged, including the soils conditions that we've just discovered, to get us to that finish line so that we as a board understand the investment we'll make to produce this product. So it's not just a nibble at a time. Sometimes it's hard to pretty soon realize that you're out over your skis.
Yep.
Can you help us with that?
Yep, very good question. And this contract, as I said, gets you to permit drawings. So you're ready to go select a contractor, depending on how you decide to do that. If we put it out to bid, there's the estimated cost to do that. If we negotiate with Le Brevier, that may be a different number. It would be lower because it's just not as big of a lift. Then as we move into construction phase services, there's this number here that is the estimate to do all the construction staking and the construction observation and the construction administration. And again, that number is a little bit variable, honestly, depending on if we're doing it with one contractor, which we would anticipate building it once, or are we going to do it with two contractors where there's some earthwork component and some infrastructure component. But this would be what we would consider the upper end of that. So all in, those two numbers are in here, bidding and construction phase services, and so the all-in number is 6.5 million. What's not in this, but we still provide, is what we call the development management point, or the development management services, which we're under an annual agreement with you guys that we work at Tony's direction, where when we get the RFP person selected and there's architectural design review. And if we're going to stay part of that, there's a scope of services in that development management fee, which I can't remember the number off the top of my head.
Like 75, was the last one, 75?
175?
Yeah.
Yeah, 175,000 for years. It's been running between 14 to 18 months of service. And so all those little details associated with development management, hey, go referee a fight between the people that are building on the south side of Lumber Lane and on the north side of Lumber Lane. Go deal with that. Those are all under that development management category, but they're done at Tony's, or the executive Tony's direction, and we don't go do things unless we're told to go do those things. So those would be the additional services that I can envision. Now, other things may come up, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. Because at the end of that $6.5 million, there's paved streets, trees are up, lights work, water services done, record drawings are completed, permits are satisfied, and we're walking away. We're not walking away from the project because we probably would never walk away. But we're finished with our scope of services. So I think that's the number you're after, Commissioner Meyer, I think.
Yes, it is. Thank you for helping connect those dots, because I think it's really important for us to understand
Yep.
how far from the finish line we are, and even our best guesses today helps us understand the whole package.
I will say, one of the things you might have seen in the communication strategy scope of services is there was two phases to that. There was the first phase, which was, let's develop a strategy, let's develop messaging, maybe we brand the site and do some of those things. They're developing an ad hoc committee. So you all are equipped with facts, communication elements that are important to stay on message about a project like this, because as I mentioned earlier, there's some bias. Now, if at some point the board says, gosh, we want you to go on a road show And we want you to go to 3 meetings a week and make presentations to Rotary and we would be back here going, gosh, we didn't plan on any of that. And do you want the whole team to go, or do you we can prime the executive director to do it? How do you want to handle that? So those types of things are not in this scope of services. And that actually reflects some direction that ad hoc committee had is we're not exactly certain how robust the communication needs to be. We don't think, we think it's just messaging and making sure we all can communicate well how important this project is, because I don't think there's a debate about how necessary something like this is. Commissioner Miller has shown that over and over again. So.
Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments?
Sir, I had a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Phil, just a quick question. So it sounds like that going back to the earth we need for filling the site there, Delta's about 30,000 cubic yards.
We're trying to get a little bit more than that, because the more we can get, the better we can make it, because we can reduce the cost of the retaining walls.
Right. So what would it cost if we had to go out and buy that?
I can't quote it off the top of my head. We've done those numbers before, and that's one of the things that we'll be back in January or February with that scenario.
Okay, because right now we're getting the fill for free.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And so that's, Commissioner Arman, you're kind of right, headed down the path of, because we kind of knew the board's going to ask this, is there this 10,000 yard option, the 45,000 yard free option? What's it cost to do 45,000 yards paid option? And we would bring back both those scenarios for you to evaluate. And then is there some other thing we can do to mitigate the costs that we haven't thought of yet? We would be thinking of that as well. I don't think so, because as you guys know, we've been working on this site design for a long time.
One more quick follow-up, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
Thank you, Phil. In looking through some of the design and construction scopes and trying to look at the exhibit here today, there's a missing piece of the trail next to Celtice Way that I've had the public ask about, trying to connect those dots, and it's been left out on purpose for the construction staging of this. Is that construction cost ideally included in this new scope, or is that something of a previous scope that's been deferred?
This one probably does not. Let me think for a second. It does not have it. So, and I can't summarize the numbers off the top of my head, but when the board budgets projects and you say we have an estimate, you award a contract, and they're unit price contracts, so you pay for what is done. What happens is you don't always hit those unit prices. You don't always hit the quantities, so you don't hit the contract value. So there's budget sitting there that you authorized to be spent on the project, but we didn't need to spend it, and it's sitting there, and we keep track of it with Tony. If something comes up like that trail one, we'll go to Tony and say, hey, there's this hole happened on the trail. We need to fix it. We negotiated a price with LeBrivier to do it. Here's the number. And here's what the budgets are, which he has them as well. We track them simultaneously. Should we bring it to the board, or is it of a value that is such that we can just move forward with a change order? That repair on the trail is going to be in one of your old budgets, so it's not in this one.
Okay.
And I want to say, on however many millions of dollars you've spent, we're somewhere a couple $100,000 under budget, which I would love to claim was totally controlled by us, and we did such a wonderful job, which there is an element of that because we're really aggressive about it. But the fact of the matter is, for those of you that are in the construction industry, some of it's just dumb luck. Some of it is because we're really aggressively managing it, and we pay attention to it because Tony pays attention to us, and we want to make sure. So that project is in a previous budget already to be done, but we don't want to do it before we do this. Again, a long-winded answer, but there's a ton of detail there that I want to make sure I'm clear with.
I appreciate the reassurance that at the end of the day, for our project, we'll have that interface with Celtice completely dressed off
Yes.
and reconnected, is my hope.
And just one other point on that, one of the things that we've budgeted in this project that will ultimately come back to the board is this slope right here. If you all are familiar with it, it's a weed-covered slope. What we did is we put that in GGLO scope of work to develop a planting plan which was pretty simple because we said it can't be deciduous. It's got to be no low irrigation, temporary irrigation that can be shut off, and probably conifer trees. So super simple. But it's going to have a cost to build it, but it's going to create a buffering quality from the sound that comes off of Southeast Way for these homes. That will be one of the things that when we get down to the brass tacks of it, we're going to be telling the board, there's $25,000 worth of trees there. Do you want to do that, or do you not want to do that? But I wanted to mention that the entire perimeter is kind of thought through, complete in that number.
And just to refresh the board's memory, that little swath that Phil was highlighting there was gifted to the agency from the city when the whole enchilada came to us. So that's why it's kind of in our plan to kind of, manage it, and most likely it will go back to the city in the long term.
Phil, I have a question. I'm not sure if I completely understand, but I'm piggybacking on Commissioner Meyer's question. Is the kind of pathway that we had on Southeast that we had to cut off that connected down to the trail, is that going to be reestablished at some point, or is there going to be an alternative way to get from Southeast down to the trail?
It will be this trail that you can, it's where that red line is.
Okay.
It will be reestablished. A portion of it will be reestablished a little bit further north.
Okay.
This little segment right here. And the reason for that, without getting way into the details, is in order to create that driveway. But yes, but the funding to reestablish it is in a previous bucket of money.
Understood that.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? No, I believe that we're looking for a motion to approve the contract amendment number 32.
I'll make a motion to approve Welsh Comer Contract Amendment Number 32, Phase 3 Attainable Housing Initiative.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's been quite a haul getting here, and it's fun to actually be ready to get to building things, because that's ultimately why we're all here. Thank you.
Exciting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple more items. I think Phil kind of covered a project update in his last visit here, so we'll skip that one. And finally, we have an informational presentation meeting with the City Council scheduled for the first quarter of 2026. I just want to kind of, formalize that with the board that we are looking to kind of have that meeting scheduled with City Council most likely in February, so that we're a little further along in our understanding of the Phase 3 initiative and our messaging. But also, it's just not going to be about Phase 3. It's going to be about all Ignite CDA, all our initiatives in all the districts. So we're looking kind of at a February timeframe, but I just wanted to kind of get a motion by the board that we can solidify that and let council know that we're looking forward to visiting with them.
So you're looking for a motion?
Yeah, just a
to
motion
schedule a
agreeing to
meeting?
schedule first quarter 2026 informational presentation to City Council.
Do we have a motion?
I'd make that motion.
Okay,
I'll second that
Commissioner
from
Arman?
Mick.
Okay, and Commissioner Meyer. All right, motion and a second. Any conversation? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I have.
All right. Next item on the agenda is a couple of board action items. We were provided with a revised employee personnel policy from legal counsel. We need approval to adopt the revised policy. Does anyone have any questions or concerns on that issue? No. We have a motion?
I'll move to approve the revised Ignite employee personnel policy.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any conversation? All right. It was a long day.
A lot of changes.
A lot of wind today. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is approval of the Tony Burns Consulting Agreement. Again, another document provided to us by legal counsel. prior to the meeting, do we have, does anyone want to have any discussion before we vote? Do I have a motion?
I would move that we approve the agreement for consulting with Tony moving forward.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is board commissioner comments. Are there any board commissioner comments this evening? Seeing none, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Meeting is adjourned.
Works, Sarah.